Hey everyone, welcome. This is an explainer from all of us here at Alpha Constructions. Today we're going to tackle something that can honestly make or break any project, and that's mastering your stakeholders. So let's just jump right in.
All right, let's start with a big one. It's a question I guarantee every single project manager has asked themselves at some point. You know the one. Why is it that even when we have the perfect plan, projects still manage to go completely off the rails?
Well, the answer? It might not be what you think. See, a lot of the time, the real issue isn't some technical glitch or a mistake in the schedule. Nope, it's a people problem. It all comes down to how we handle all the different folks involved in the project.
And look, this isn't just some vague idea. The official rulebook for our industry, the PMBOK guide, says it loud and clear. Your ability as a project manager to identify and engage with all your stakeholders, well, that can literally be the difference between success and failure. It's that important.
But here's the good news. There's actually a system for this, a proven, four-step process straight from the experts. You can think of it as your game plan to get from total chaos to being in control. We're going to walk through each one. First, you identify your players. Then, you create the game plan. After that, you manage the conversation. And finally, you check the pulse. Let's do it.
Okay, let's kick things off with step one. Identify your players. It's pretty straightforward, right? Before you can manage anybody, you've got to know who they are. This step is all about figuring out every single person who has some kind of stake in your project's success. The official term we use is stakeholder. And, the definition is, well, it's really broad. We're not just talking about your client or your boss. It's literally anyone who can affect your project or, and this is key, anyone who even thinks they'll be affected by it. So let's make this real. On a construction project, who are we talking about? Well, internally, you've got your project sponsor, your own team members, your boss, all the usual suspects. But then you look externally and the list gets huge. You've got your clients, your suppliers, the city inspectors. What about the neighbors who live next to the site? Or even the people who are eventually going to use the building? Yep, they're all stakeholders. So the big goal of this first step is to create something called a stakeholder register. And I want to be clear, this is way more than just a list of names and numbers. It's your project's who's who. It's where you'll track not just who they are, but what they care about and how much influence they have. All right, so you've got your list. You know who all the players are. Now what do you do with it? That brings us right to step two, create the game plan. This is where we shift from just knowing who everyone is to figuring out how we're going to work with them. And here's the thing you absolutely have to remember. One-size-fits-all communication just doesn't work. A weekly email update might be perfect for your supplier, but the project sponsor, they probably need a face-to-face meeting. It's all about tailoring your approach based on what they need and how much they can impact your project. Now, to help you build this game plan, there's this really cool tool called the Stakeholder Engagement Assessment Matrix. I know, it's a mouthful, but just think of it like a relationship scorecard. It gives you a crystal clear picture of where each relationship is right now and where you need it to be. It's actually pretty simple to use. On one side, you mark down their current level of engagement. Are they totally unaware of the project? Are they resistant to it? Or just kind of neutral? Then, on the other side, you decide what your desired level is. Do you need them to be supportive or maybe even leading the charge? That gap, that little space between C and D, that is your action plan. It tells you exactly where you need to put in the work. And that leads us perfectly into step three, manage the conversation. Okay, this is where the rubber meets the road. You've done the planning, you've identified the gaps. Now it's time to roll up your sleeves and actually do the work. This is all about execution.
And what's the whole point of this step? It's simple, but it's so powerful. It's all about increasing support for your project while minimizing any resistance. You're actively trying to bring people over to your side, to turn someone who's neutral or even fighting you into an ally. So, what does this actually look like day to day? Well, it means you're communicating constantly to keep people engaged. You're negotiating, you're managing expectations. You're always looking around the corner, trying to spot problems before they blow up. And when issues do pop up, you're jumping on them and resolving them fast. All right, we're on to our final step. Step 4, check the pulse. Look, this whole process isn't a set it and forget it kind of deal. You can't just make a plan and hope for the best. You have to be constantly checking in, monitoring what's going on, and be ready to adjust your strategy on the fly. Really, all you're doing here is comparing your plan to what's actually happening in the real world. You got to be asking yourself questions all the time, like, is our communication plan working? Has that person who was really resistant started to come around? Are the people who supported us from the start still with us?
And I'm going to say it again because it's so important. This is an ongoing thing. Projects are dynamic, they change. And people, their opinions and priorities can change too. So this monitoring, this pulse check, has to happen over and over again all the way through the project lifecycle.
Okay, so let's recap. We've gone through the 4 big steps: identify, plan, manage, and monitor. Now let's zoom out and talk about the big picture. Why does all of this matter so much? I'm going to argue that this process is just as critical as any blueprint or schedule you'll ever look at. Here at Alpha Constructions, we believe this to our core. Successful projects, the ones that really last, are built on strong relationships. The concrete and steel are important, for sure, but the real foundation is the people.
And you know what? The PMBOK guide backs this up completely. It says that keeping your stakeholders satisfied, well, that's not just a nice to have. It should be a key project objective. You should treat it with the same importance as your budget, your schedule, and your quality targets. So as we wrap this up, I want to leave you with something to think about for your own project. Take a second and ask yourself, who is my most important stakeholder? And maybe even more important, who's the one I've been completely overlooking?
Hey, thanks so much for joining us today. This has been an explainer from Alpha Constructions. We really hope this helps you build better, stronger projects by starting with the people. Take care.